The night air tasted like something I couldn't name, a gardenia, maybe, or the kind of expensive perfume that clung to people who had never worried about rent. I was sitting on the cold stone steps behind the Hartwell estate, my bare feet pressed against gravel that seemed personally offended by my presence, trying to convince a potted fern that I was absolutely fine. The fern was not convinced. Neither was my body, which had decided that the world was now a carnival ride I had not purchased a ticket for. The champagne had been the first betrayal. Then the cocktails, those dangerous pink things that tasted like childhood and burned like regret. And then, well, then Lena had walked in with her new girlfriend, and I had stopped counting. I was 23. I was an omega with a degree in creative writing and a tendency to fall for people who treated affection like a limited-time offer. I was also, apparently, the kind of person who talked to houseplants at midnight while wearing one heel. The other heel was somewhere in the hydrangeas. I had watched it flee. I respected its decision. "Your leaves are very symmetrical," I told the fern. "That's not a compliment. That's a cry for help." The fern said nothing. Ferns were excellent listeners. Behind me, the party was still breathing. The Hartwell mansion pulsed with the kind of money that didn't need to announce itself, the kind that lived in the walls, in the oil paintings, in the way the staff moved like shadows with silver trays. My best friend Clara's 25th birthday had become a social event that required 200 guests, a string quartet, and a floral arrangement that probably cost more than my monthly salary. Clara was inside, probably laughing, probably surrounded by people who actually belonged here. I loved her. I loved her like family. But sometimes, loving someone who had everything meant learning how to disappear gracefully when the weight of your own life became too heavy to carry through their hallways. The door behind me creaked. I turned too fast, my body had not received the memo about coordinated movement, and the world tilted dangerously. One hand shot out, caught the stone wall, and held on like I had just discovered gravity was optional. And then I saw her. Rebecca Hartwell stood in the doorway, backlit by the soft amber glow of the house, wearing nothing but a dark burgundy silk robe tied with exact precision at her waist. Her black hair was loose tonight, falling past her shoulders in waves that looked effortless in the way that suggested actual effort. Her face was bare, no makeup, no armor, and the sight of it made something in my chest shift painfully. Because Rebecca Hartwell without makeup was devastating. It wasn't that she needed it. It was that she never showed this version of herself to anyone. The party guests got the sharp suits, the controlled expressions, the scent of cedar and authority that made alphas twice her age step carefully around her. I got this. She was 31. She was an alpha. She was Clara's older sister. And she was the most terrifying person I had ever wanted to look at twice. "You're outside." Her voice was low, precise, like she was reading a verdict. On the ground. At midnight. In November. I blinked. "I'm observing the local flora. It's a hobby." "Your shoe is in the hydrangeas." The hydrangeas made a compelling argument. Rebecca's eyes moved over me with clinical efficiency, my flushed face, my bare foot, my abandoned heel, the fern I was still gripping like a lifeline. Then back to my face. She didn't look angry. She looked accurate. Olive. She said my name like she had found it in a drawer, examined it, and decided it was worth keeping. What happened? I opened my mouth to lie. I had a dozen jokes ready, 100 ways to deflect. But Rebecca Hartwell had a way of looking at you that made lying feel like a waste of effort. "Lena brought someone," I said, and my voice came out smaller than I wanted. "She brought her new girlfriend." And I gestured vaguely at myself, at the fern, at the general state of my existence. I handled it well. You're on the ground. The ground is very supportive. Rebecca stepped out onto the patio. She didn't rush, didn't move with any visible urgency, but something about her presence made the garden seem to hold its breath. The scent of her, jasmine and rain on stone and something deeper, something alpha and quiet and impossibly warm, washed over me like a warning I chose to ignore. "How much did you drink?" she asked. I looked at the empty glass in my hand. It looked guilty. Less than the fern is claiming. Olive. Emotionally or mathematically? Her mouth did something, not quite a smile, not quite anything. A muscle in her jaw tightened, and I realized she was trying not to laugh. That was dangerous. Rebecca Hartwell with a sense of humor was a weapon I was not equipped to survive. She held out her hand. I stared at it. Rebecca Hartwell had hands that looked like they had signed documents that ruined people's lives. Long fingers, pale skin, nails filed to exact perfection. She wore no rings. She didn't need them. Her presence was enough to mark any room she entered. "I can stand by myself," I said. "Then do it." I planted one foot on the stone step. The step moved. Not dramatically, just enough to suggest betrayal. I wobbled, arms pinwheeling, and the fern became my witness as I listed sideways toward the hydrangeas. Rebecca caught my elbow before I could fall. Her grip was firm, not rough, not lingering. Practical. Immediate. Her hand was warm against my skin, and I realized I was shivering. "You're cold," she said. "I'm emotionally warm." "You're shivering." "I contain multitudes." Rebecca exhaled slowly. The sound was almost a laugh, but not quite too controlled for that. Too careful. She let go of my elbow the second I had balance, not fast like she was disgusted, fast like she was afraid of what touching me might become. Then she shrugged off her robe. I forgot how to breathe correctly. Under the robe, she wore a simple black sleeveless slip dress, severe, elegant, the kind of thing that probably cost more than my rent. Her shoulders were bare, the curve of her collarbones visible in the dim light, and I had to look away because looking too long felt like trespassing. She wrapped the robe around me before I could protest. Her hands moved with quick precision, one tug to close it over my chest, another to secure it at my side. The silk was still warm from her body. The scent of her, jasmine, cedar, something clean and sharp and undeniably alpha, settled around me like a second skin. "Your robe is going to judge me," I mumbled. "It knows my credit score is bad. It will survive you." That's almost affectionate. It's factual. Facts can be affectionate. Rebecca's hands paused at the knot. 1 second. 2. Her fingers hovered near the silk, close enough that I could feel the warmth of them through the fabric. Then she stepped back. "We should get you inside," she said. "I'm fine." "You're not." "I'm always fine. That's my brand." Rebecca looked at me then, really looked. Her dark eyes moved over my face, cataloging the flush on my cheeks, the way my lashes were sticking together from unshed tears I hadn't noticed, the small tremble in my lips that I couldn't seem to stop. Something behind her expression shifted. Not softness, Rebecca Hartwell didn't do softness. Something sharper. Controlled. Tired. "People worry about Clara," she said. Loudly. Dramatically. "They worry about you when it becomes convenient." The sentence landed like a blow, too close to the truth I had been avoiding all night. "That's not true." Rebecca said nothing. That was the terrible thing about cold people, they didn't waste comfort on lies. She guided me through the side door, one hand hovering near my back, close enough to catch me if I fell, not close enough to claim me. I wobbled twice. Both times, she steadied me with that same quiet efficiency, like I was a glass she had decided not to let break. The side hallway was dim and cool, the party noise fading behind us. Marble floors gave way to dark wood. Family photos lined the walls, Clara missing front teeth, Clara in a graduation gown, Clara and Rebecca as children, Rebecca already looking like she had a plan for world domination. I stopped in front of one photo. Clara was maybe 12. Rebecca would have been 18, poised and composed even then, but there was something different in her expression, a hint of a smile, a softness around her eyes. You used to smile, I said. Rebecca took the photo off the wall. I blinked. Did you just confiscate your own face? You're drunk. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting tonight. She set the frame face down on a console table, her movements precise and unhurried. That's dramatic, I said. That's efficient. You're the scariest person I've ever met. Good. Not in a bad way. That sentence doesn't improve itself. I wanted to laugh. It came out wrong, too thin, too close to something that might have been a sob. Rebecca's posture changed, barely perceptible. Her shoulders didn't soften. Her face didn't melt. She simply stopped moving, and the whole hallway seemed to obey. What happened? She asked. Nothing. I'm fine. Olive. I looked down at my bare foot on her polished floor. Lena came with someone. And my voice cracked. I knew she was seeing other people. I knew. But seeing it, she had her hand on that girl's waist, and she looked at me, and I just... My eyes filled before I could stop them. Humiliating. Immediate. Like my body had been waiting for one accurate sentence to break open. Rebecca's voice dropped lower. Do not use her word for you. I looked up. What? I saw the messages. When I picked up your phone, I didn't read them intentionally. But I saw enough. Lena's texts. I had forgotten about them. The screen had lit up while Rebecca was holding my phone, and she must have seen. She called me pathetic, I said. But that's not, she didn't mean it like. She doesn't get to name you. The air left my lungs slowly. For once, I had no joke. None. I just stood there, shivering in her robe, while she looked at me with calm, terrifying certainty. I should go home, I said. No. I can call a ride. No. I can sleep on the couch. No. Do you have other words? When necessary. Rebecca moved past me and opened a door at the end of the hall. Her bedroom. I knew it before I saw enough to be sure, the dark blue walls, the low bed with white sheets folded with military precision, a book face down on the nightstand, one glass of water. A room that no party sound had permission to enter. I stopped at the threshold. This is your room. Yes. I'm not sleeping in your room. You're sleeping in my bed tonight. The sentence shouldn't have sounded like that. It should have sounded practical, cold, annoyed. It sounded like the rest of the world being locked out. I gripped the robe tighter. Rebecca. I can't just. Olive. Her voice softened. Come inside. I stepped forward. The room smelled like her, jasmine and cedar and something clean and expensive. I felt my body relax against my will, my omega instincts recognizing safety even when my brain was still trying to argue. Sit, she said. I'm fine. Sit, or I will call Clara and tell her you're being difficult in a way that requires birthday intervention. I sat. Rebecca crouched in front of me and reached for the strap of my remaining heel. I jerked my foot back instinctively, and she stopped instantly, not annoyed, not offended. Still. May I? The question landed harder than the touch would have. I nodded. Only then did she continue. Her fingers were careful around my ankle, no lingering, no taking advantage of the room, the alcohol, the robe, the stupid tremble in my skin. She removed the shoe and set it beside the other one. That restraint did something worse than flirting. It made me trust her. She handed me water. Then she crossed to the dresser, took out a folded gray shirt, and placed it beside me. Bathroom is through there. Change if you can. Leave the door unlocked. I looked at the shirt, soft from washing, too plain to be expensive, too intimate to be nothing. Where will you sleep? I asked. In the chair. No. Rebecca's eyebrow lifted. You can't give me your bed and sleep in a chair, I said. That's emotionally illegal. I'll risk prison. Rebecca. Her name came out smaller than I meant it to. She looked at me. I don't want to be trouble, I said. For once, she answered too quickly. You're not. Then she seemed to realize how much the words had revealed. She reached for my phone, it had slipped from my hand onto the bed, and placed it on the nightstand, screen down. Are you going to look at my messages? I asked. I'm putting it out of reach. So you don't make a mistake tonight. The relief was embarrassing. So was the fact that I trusted her. I'm not offering intimacy, she said. I'm offering safety. That was worse. Intimacy I could dodge with jokes. Safety didn't ask permission. Sleep, she said. I changed in her bathroom and came back wearing her shirt. I kept the robe wrapped around me, because apparently my body had developed loyalty to silk. I crawled into a bed that smelled faintly like jasmine and clean cotton. Rebecca turned off the lamp. In the dark, I heard her settle into the chair beside the window. Not close. Not far enough. Rebecca? Yes? If I say something embarrassing, don't remember it. A pause. I won't use it against you. That's not the same thing. No. The room held that answer, honest, terrible, safe. I closed my eyes. The last thing I heard was Rebecca's voice, low in the dark, telling someone at the door that no, Olive was not available. No, Clara did not need to come in. Yes, she was sure. Because for the first time all night, someone had looked at me and not asked me to make my pain entertaining. When I woke up, morning light had turned the curtains pale. My head hurt. My mouth tasted like regret and pink champagne. For 3 merciful seconds, I didn't remember where I was. Then I moved, and felt silk against my arm. Rebecca's robe. Her bed. Her bedroom. I turned my head slowly. She was asleep in the chair beside the window, still in her black slip dress, one arm folded beneath her head. Her posture was finally ruined by exhaustion. My phone rested loosely in her hand, screen down, like she had fallen asleep guarding it. Carefully, I eased it from her fingers. Before I could think better of it, the screen lit up. A message from Clara. Olive, why is my sister guarding you like a state secret? Then another, also, why did she just tell me to lower my voice in my own house? Then one more, are you in her bed? Rebecca opened her eyes. She saw me reading. For one breath, neither of us moved. Then she looked at the phone, looked at me, and said, perfectly calm, you may want to answer that carefully. I sat up too fast. My head immediately requested a lawyer. Rebecca rose from the chair like she hadn't spent the night sleeping in it. Unfair. Some people woke up looking human. Rebecca Hartwell woke up looking like she had been interrupted between ruling countries. I, meanwhile, was wearing her shirt, her robe, and the kind of facial expression usually found on raccoons caught mid-crime. My best friend thinks I'm in your bed, I whispered. You are in my bed. That's not the point. It is legally the most accurate point. I stared at her. She crossed the room, took the phone from my hand, and glanced at the notifications. She used 6 question marks, Rebecca said. Clara uses punctuation as a weapon. She's outside the door. A knock came immediately. Not a polite knock, a Clara knock. Rebecca. Clara's voice was bright and suspicious. I'm being calm. Rebecca looked at the door. No, you're not. I am being birthday calm, which is different. I grabbed the blanket to my chest, as if Clara had never seen me in a swimsuit, sick, crying, or wearing a face mask that made me look like a damp ghost. She can't come in, I whispered. Rebecca's eyes moved over me once, not in a way that made me feel exposed, in a way that checked for damage. Headache. Panic. Balance. Shame. Then she walked to the door and opened it exactly 6 inches. Clara appeared in the gap, with yesterday's glitter still in her hair, mascara under one eye, and the expression of a woman who had just discovered her sister had a secret second career as a scandal. Behind her, 2 cousins hovered in the hallway. Rebecca didn't even look at them. Leave. The cousins vanished. Clara tried to peer around her. Olive? I'm alive, I called. Clara's eyes widened. Are you wearing my sister's robe? I looked down. The robe looked back at me in dark burgundy silence. It was assigned to me by medical staff, I said. Rebecca is not medical staff. No, Rebecca said. I'm the person who found your best friend outside, drunk, cold, half-chewed, and being filmed by one of your guests. Clara's face changed fast. The comedy drained out of her eyes, and suddenly she looked younger, not birthday chaotic, not suspicious. Just guilty. Who filmed her? No one, Rebecca said. Because I stopped it. Clara looked at me. Olive? Rebecca. I didn't even mean to say her name. It just came out, small and helpless. Clara noticed. Of course Clara noticed. She had spent 15 years noticing every crush I pretended not to have, every time I said I was fine with the emotional accuracy of a smoke alarm. Her eyes flicked from me to her sister and back. Oh, she said slowly. No, I said. I didn't say anything. You said oh. Oh is not a crime. It is when you say it like that. Rebecca opened the door wider but stayed in the doorway, blocking most of the room with her body. A boundary in human form. Clara, she said. Get Olive breakfast. Toast, eggs if the kitchen has them. Coffee later, not now. Water first. Clara blinked. Are you giving me instructions? Yes. About Olive? Yes. She's my best friend. Then behave like it. The hallway went quiet. Not silent in a dramatic way, just stripped down. Clara's mouth parted, then closed. The words should have sounded harsh. From anyone else, they would have. From Rebecca, they sounded like the cleanest version of the truth. Clara looked at me again, and her face folded a little. I didn't know you were that drunk. I didn't announce it with balloons. I thought you were doing your thing. Making jokes, disappearing for air, coming back like nothing happened. That landed somewhere soft and bruised. Rebecca didn't look at me, but I felt her attention sharpen. I picked at the blanket. Usually it works. Clara swallowed. I'm sorry. Someone offered me a crumb of apology, and I wanted to build them a bakery. But Rebecca had said people worried about me when it became convenient, and the sentence had followed me into sleep. So I did something uncomfortable. I didn't rush. I know, I said. Clara's eyes got wet. That was worse. I hated making Clara cry. She cried like a golden retriever in human form, made you feel like you had kicked sunlight. Rebecca, apparently immune to sunlight, said, breakfast. Clara nodded too fast. Right. Yes. Toast, eggs, water, no coffee. Got it. She pointed at me. You stay there. I was planning to leap from the balcony. There is no balcony. Then my options are limited. Clara almost smiled. Rebecca didn't, but the corner of her mouth made a small decision and then pretended it hadn't. Clara saw that, too. Her eyes narrowed. Rebecca shut the door before her sister could emotionally investigate. The room became too quiet again. I sat in the bed, wrapped in silken shame, while Rebecca picked up the water glass and refilled it from a carafe near the dresser. You didn't have to say that to her, I said. Yes, I did. She feels bad. She should. I looked up. Rebecca handed me the glass. Not because you were hurt. Because she missed it. She was having fun. She can have fun and still notice when her best friend is unraveling beside the dessert table. My fingers tightened around the glass. There it was again. That dangerous accuracy, the kind that made me feel defended and exposed at the same time. I don't like being a burden, I said. You prefer being entertainment. I laughed once, dry and embarrassed. That sounded mean. It was observant. Do you ever soften the blow? When the truth is not already softened by everyone else avoiding it? I hated how much I wanted to keep listening. I drank the water because my throat needed something to do. Rebecca moved around the room with efficient quiet, opening a drawer, taking out pain reliever, setting 2 tablets on a small plate instead of dropping them into my palm. Everything she did had the same strange quality, careful without asking to be praised for it. That made it harder. Kindness you could mock was easy. You could roll your eyes at speeches, reject grand gestures. Rebecca's care came in the exact dose that made refusal look childish. Did I say anything terrible last night? I asked. She paused with the plate in her hand. My stomach turned. Oh God. I told the fern it had no jurisdiction over me. That's between you and the fern. I accused my shoe of betrayal. It knows what it did. You said facts can flirt. My eyes closed. No. Yes. I was drunk. I remember. Please don't. I said I wouldn't use it against you. I didn't say I would develop amnesia. I opened one eye. She was looking at me with almost no expression, but something in her eyes had warmed by a degree. Not enough for anyone else to notice. Enough to ruin me. Anything else? I asked carefully. Rebecca set the plate on the nightstand. You asked why people laughed when you were trying not to cry. The air changed. I wished she had said anything else, that I had flirted with a lamp, that I had tried to order soup from a painting, that I had declared war on gravity with witnesses. Not that. Never that. I looked at the water in my glass. The surface trembled because my hand did. Rebecca noticed, and for once, she didn't immediately speak. The silence didn't feel empty. It felt like she was standing guard around the part of me that wanted to run. I don't remember saying that, I said. I know. I didn't mean to make it dramatic. It wasn't dramatic. It sounds dramatic. It sounded tired. My throat tightened. I set the glass down before I could spill it all over her sheets. Rebecca's hand moved, then stopped at her side. She could have touched my shoulder. She could have done something gentle enough to confuse me for weeks. She didn't. That restraint was starting to feel like its own kind of touch. A knock saved me. Clara entered with a tray balanced in both hands and suspicion restored to her face like makeup. I bring offerings, she announced. Toast, eggs, water, 1 banana. That looks emotionally supportive. And no coffee, because apparently my sister has become the dictator of Olive's bloodstream. Rebecca took the tray from her before it tilted. You put hot sauce beside the eggs. Olive likes hot sauce. Not today. Clara looked at me. You do like hot sauce. I currently like not dying. Fair. Rebecca removed the hot sauce and set the tray across my lap. Clara leaned against the dresser, watching us. I took one bite of toast. Both Hartwell women stared. I stopped chewing. Am I being evaluated? Yes, Clara said. No, Rebecca said at the same time. Clara pointed between us. That was weird. It was breakfast, Rebecca said. You never make anyone breakfast. I didn't make it. You did. You supervised breakfast. I supervise many things. Not Olive. Rebecca's eyes cut to her sister. Clara lifted both hands. I'm just saying you're being very attentive. The word hit the room and stayed there. Smug. I stared hard at my eggs. Rebecca picked up the folded robe tie from the bed and retied it at my waist, because it had loosened while I sat there. The movement was quick, practical, almost nothing. Clara's eyebrows climbed. My toast became the most interesting object in the known universe. Rebecca stepped back. She was unwell. Clara's grin began slowly, which was the most dangerous kind. Right. Right. Medical supervision. Emotional prison. State secret. I kicked her lightly under the tray. She mouthed, "Are you okay?" The joke left her face while she waited. I nodded. Then, because Rebecca was looking at the window and not at me, I mouthed back, "Later." Clara nodded, too. That was the thing about us, even when we failed each other, we knew where the emergency exits were. Rebecca turned back before Clara could ask anything else. You should shower after you eat. I had Marta put clean clothes in the guest bathroom. Marta knows? I asked, horrified. Marta knows everything and judges less than the rest of this family. Clara snorted. That is true. Marta once watched Uncle Peter back into a fountain and simply handed him a towel. Your family has a fountain? I asked. Clara said, why? For emotional support, apparently. I laughed. It hurt my head, but it felt good. Rebecca looked at me then, and the look was so brief I almost missed it. Almost. Like she had been waiting to see if I could still laugh without bleeding underneath it. Then my phone buzzed. It was still near Rebecca. She picked it up and looked at the screen. Her face went still. Who is it? I asked. Rebecca didn't answer immediately. Clara pushed off the dresser. Rebecca. Rebecca handed me the phone. Lena. 3 messages. Are you still at Clara's? I saw you leave with her sister, LOL random. Hope you're doing okay. Looked like a rough night. The toast turned to dust in my mouth. That was Lena, concerned in the way people were when they wanted you to know they had noticed you struggling without having to feel responsible for it. Clara said, I'm going to kill her. No, Rebecca said. I'm going to emotionally kill her. No. I'm going to send a very composed text that ruins her week. No. I stared at the screen. 3 messages, and somehow Lena had still managed to make me feel like something that needed to be checked on rather than someone worth showing up for. Rebecca took the phone from my hand. I let her. She didn't type. She didn't delete. She didn't make some grand protective speech. She simply turned the phone face down and placed it beside the water. Do not answer from pain, she said. Clara crossed her arms. That's actually good advice. Annoying source, but good advice. Rebecca ignored her. I looked at the phone, then at her. What do I answer from? For the first time that morning, she didn't have an immediate command ready. Her eyes stayed on mine. Then she said, from the version of you that doesn't need her to understand what she lost. The room went very still. Clara looked between us again, this time, she didn't joke. My face warmed, but not from embarrassment. Rebecca seemed to realize where we were, who was present, what she had allowed into her voice. She straightened. You should eat. But the damage was done. Not bad damage. Worse. Warm damage. I picked up the toast again. Obedience had become easier than breathing. Clara watched her sister walk to the door. Where are you going? To make sure no one downstairs discusses last night. Rebecca opened the door, then paused. She looked back at me. After you shower, come to the library. I blinked. Why? Because you and I need to discuss what you remember. My stomach flipped. Clara's mouth opened. Rebecca looked at her sister, privately, and then left. The door clicked shut. For 3 seconds, neither of us spoke. Then Clara turned to me slowly, eyes wide, glitter still in her hair. Olive. I held up one hand. Do not. My sister just summoned you to the library. She summons everyone. She's summon-shaped. She gave you her robe. She gave me boundaries and hydration. She slept in a chair guarding your phone. She is passionate about digital wellness. Clara pointed at me. You are making jokes because you're panicking. I'm making jokes because I am gifted. You like my sister. The tray almost slid off my lap. I have a head injury. You do not. I could. Olive. There's my name again, but Clara's version, familiar, worried, too loud, mine. I looked down at Rebecca's robe tied around my waist. The silk no longer felt like a borrowed thing. It felt like evidence. I don't know what this is, I said. Clara went quiet. That scared me more than her teasing. She sat on the edge of the bed, careful not to jostle the tray. She's my sister, she said. I know. She's also her. I know. She doesn't do warm. Not like this. I swallowed. Outside the door, footsteps moved down the hall, then stopped. Rebecca's voice cut through the house, calm and lethal, telling someone that if Olive's name appeared in a single group chat, the next family dinner would become very uncomfortable for everyone involved. Clara stared at the door. I stared, too. The headache pulsed behind my eyes. My phone stayed face down beside the water. And somewhere down the hall, Rebecca Hartwell began quietly destroying the morning gossip before it could touch me. Clara whispered, "Oh." I closed my eyes. Please stop saying oh. The library in the Hartwell house looked exactly like the kind of place a family went to avoid apologizing. Dark shelves, brass lamps, leather chairs arranged at angles that suggested conversations happened here but only after signing something. A long table sat in the center of the room, covered in cream envelopes, seating cards, ribbons, and a vase of white roses that looked too disciplined to smell like anything. I stood in the doorway wearing borrowed jeans, a soft black sweater Marta had somehow found in my size, and the lingering knowledge that Rebecca Hartwell had told half her relatives to stop saying my name before noon. My hair was damp from the shower. My headache had reduced itself from a marching band to one angry drummer. My dignity remained missing. The robe was no longer on my body. That should have helped. It didn't. Somehow not wearing it made it worse, like the silk had left a shape around me that everyone could still see, like I had walked into this room carrying evidence no one had formally entered into the record. Rebecca had handed my phone back after my shower, screen down, like returning a weapon with the safety on. I had taken it with both hands, embarrassing. So was the fact that I hadn't wanted her to stop guarding it. Now it sat on the edge of the long table beside a stack of blank seating cards, dark and quiet and still capable of ruining my life. Rebecca stood at the table with a pen in one hand and reading glasses low on her nose. That should not have affected me. Reading glasses were not romantic. They were office supplies for faces. Unfortunately, on Rebecca, they looked less like a need for vision correction and more like a threat with hinges. She didn't look up immediately. Close the door. I did. Because I had apparently lost all survival instinct overnight. This is how mystery novels start, I said. Only if you touch the decanter. There's a decanter? No. That was the test. You failed it. I walked farther in, keeping one hand near the back of a chair in case my body decided to continue yesterday's rebellion. The library smelled like paper, roses, and lemon oil. No party noise reached this room. No Clara laugh. No cousins. No Lena messages. Just Rebecca, the table, and the terrible quiet of being expected to tell the truth. Her eyes moved over me once. She checked me the way she checked a room, damp hair, clean clothes, phone face down, both feet under me. Phone, she asked. Currently not attacking anyone. Good. I hated that the inventory made me feel steadier. I hated more that she seemed to know it would. You wanted to discuss what I remember, I said. Yes. I remember the gate. Judging me. Reasonable. I remember you taking down a photo because I accused you of smiling. Her pen paused only for a second. I remember the robe, I said, softer. Rebecca looked up then. Her eyes were clearer in daylight, dark, steady, more tired than anyone downstairs would ever be allowed to know. And the rest, she asked. I looked at the table instead of her. Cream envelopes, names in black ink, Hartwell relatives paired into neat little boxes, lives organized into dinner positions. I remember Lena texting. Rebecca's face changed at the edge, nothing dramatic, just a door locking. I remember you telling me not to answer from pain, I said. That advice remains current. I wasn't going to text her. You gave me your passcode in under 10 seconds. I was under medical dictatorship. You were under pink champagne. Basically juice, I muttered. Basically a crime. A laugh escaped before I could stop it. It made Rebecca look away, not fully, just down at the seating cards, like she needed a second to place something back where it belonged. That tiny retreat did more damage than if she had smiled. I gripped the chair tighter. What else? Rebecca removed her glasses and set them on the table. The movement was careful. Too careful. My stomach tightened. Oh God. You apologized for being heavy. I blinked. Heavy? Emotionally. You said people liked you better when you were light. The words moved through me slowly, like cold water finding every crack. I didn't remember saying that. I remembered feeling it. That was worse. Rebecca didn't rush to comfort me. She didn't soften it into something easier. She let the sentence exist in the room, as if it had the right to be there. Drunk me is very rude, I said. She was honest. That's worse. Yes. I looked at her. Most people would have told me I wasn't heavy. That everyone loved me. That Lena was awful. That Clara cared. That I shouldn't think like that. Rebecca didn't decorate the wound. She saw it. She didn't step away from it. That made me feel less ridiculous for having it. I don't like when people have to carry me, I said. They didn't. You did. I helped you walk through a hallway. You gave me your bed. Yes. You slept in a chair. Yes. You blocked Cam. You took my phone. You told Clara you stopped your family. You keep saying things that make it very hard to pretend this is normal. Rebecca's gaze didn't move from my face. No, she said. It isn't. My hand tightened around the chair. It did the opposite of help. I was grateful. That was already dangerous. I don't want to make this weird, I said. Rebecca's expression shifted, not softer exactly, worse, affected. You're not making it weird. I'm wearing Marta's emergency sweater in your library while your family prepares judgment salmon downstairs. Smoked salmon. Not the point. No, Rebecca said. It isn't. Silence passed between us, the kind that didn't feel empty, the kind that made me want to say something reckless just to get away from it. Rebecca's fingers rested near her glasses, not touching them. I made choices last night, she said. I looked up. You were cold. You were drunk. You were being filmed. You were about to answer someone from pain. Those facts mattered. She paused. But do not turn my choice into an accident. The sentence landed cleanly. Not romantic. Not romantic. That was the problem. I stared at her. Rebecca held my gaze. You are not evidence of anything shameful, she said. Not because I gave you a place to sleep. My eyes burned so quickly I got angry at them. That is a very intense thing to say before brunch. Most true things are inconveniently timed. I looked at the seating card in my hand until the black edge blurred. A knock hit the door. Clara entered before either of us answered, carrying 2 mugs and wearing the expression of a woman who had tried not to eavesdrop and failed with athletic commitment. I brought tea, she said. Rebecca looked at her. You brought curiosity. I can carry 2 things. This is private. I know. Clara set 1 mug beside me and 1 near her sister. That's why I'm being casual. You're hovering. I was born here. Technically, the house is hovering around me. I reached for the mug before Rebecca could dismiss her and maybe accidentally make things worse. Thank you, I said. Clara looked at me closely, not teasing now. She had changed clothes, too. Sweatshirt, shorts. Glitter finally washed out of her hair. Without the birthday lights, she looked tired and worried and a little lost. "Are we okay?" she asked. The question landed with more fear than I expected. Rebecca went still. I realized she was giving me the room to answer, not protecting me from Clara, not speaking for me. Just making space. That was new, too. I wrapped both hands around the mug. "We're okay," I said. Clara's shoulders dropped a little. "But I don't want to be the person everyone assumes can take the joke." Her face crumpled in tiny increments. "I didn't know I was doing that." "I know." Clara looked down at the mug in her hand. "I think I did know, sometimes," she said. "And I liked that you made everything easier." The honesty hurt. It also helped. "I didn't want to make your birthday weird," I said. "My birthday was weird before you got involved." I wore a cocktail stirrer tiara. That was iconic. It was structurally unsound. I almost smiled. Clara didn't. Her eyes lifted to mine again, wet and serious. "But you could have told me." "I keep saying that like it means you believed it." I had no answer. Rebecca's voice came quietly from the end of the table. "Knowing is not the same as feeling aloud." Clara looked at her sister. So did I. Rebecca's gaze stayed on the seating cards, as if annoyed with herself for speaking. Clara swallowed. "I hate that you understand her that well." The room tightened. Then Clara looked at me quickly. "I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, I know." "No. Stop saying I know." Her voice cracked around the edges. "I want you to say something else." I stared into the tea. Steam warmed my face. "I didn't want to be another emergency you had to carry." Clara's mouth opened. Nothing came out. "I thought if I made it funny enough, it would count as handled," I said. And then it wasn't handled. It was just quieter. Clara set her mug down and came around the table. She hugged me carefully, like I was something bruised and stubborn. I let her. She smelled like coconut shampoo and leftover birthday frosting, familiar, safe in a different way. Over her shoulder, I saw Rebecca watching us with an expression I couldn't read. Not cold. Not warm. Something held back. When Clara let go, she lowered her voice. "And we're still doing later? The real version?" I nodded once. "The real version." She wiped under one eye with her sleeve. "Okay. Great. Emotional growth before noon. Hate that for us." I laughed into my tea. It hurt my head. It still felt good. Clara looked at the table. "Why are there seating cards everywhere?" Rebecca put her glasses back on. "Because your grandmother moved the family brunch up to 1. Clara froze. "Today?" "Yes. But half the family is hungover. That may improve their manners." I looked between them. "Family brunch?" Clara made a sound of pure dread. "Hartwell brunch is not brunch. It's judgment with croissants." "It is a birthday tradition," Rebecca said. "It is a hostage situation with smoked salmon." Rebecca handed Clara a stack of cards. "Then help." Clara stared at the cards as if they had insulted her. I should have backed away. I should have found my bag, thanked Marta, and escaped before another Hartwell ritual could adopt me. Instead, I saw Lena's name on a seating card. The room didn't move. I did, only a little. My fingers tightened around the mug. My breath caught in the ugly space between inhale and panic. The black ink sat there, neat and harmless, Lena Vale. Like she wasn't the reason I had ended up outside talking to ferns. Like she hadn't touched another girl's waist in front of the dessert table and smiled because she knew exactly where I was looking. Like she hadn't texted concern in a voice that still knew how to bruise. My hand went cold around the mug. Rebecca saw before I spoke. Of course she did. Clara followed my gaze. Her face changed. Why is Lena on the list? Rebecca picked up Lena's card between two fingers. She came with Adrian Vale's daughter. Adrian Vale, as in Grandma's wine friend Adrian? Yes. Lena was invited before last night. Clara looked at me. We can make her sit in the driveway. No, Rebecca said. We can make her sit near Uncle Peter. That's cruel to Peter. He backed into a fountain. He's suffered enough. I wanted to laugh. I also wanted to disappear into the nearest antique cabinet and become an heirloom. Rebecca didn't put Lena's card back where it had been. She held it for one measured second. Then she placed it at the far end of the table. She does not sit near Olive. The ease of it startled me. Like my discomfort was not a debate, not an inconvenience, not something I had to prove worthy of adjustment. Clara's eyes flicked to me, then to her sister. That look again, the look that said, I am watching a door I did not know existed open in my house. Rebecca picked up another card and handed it to me. Write names. I have terrible handwriting. I've seen Clara's. The family survived. Clara gasped. My handwriting has personality. It has weather. I laughed again, and this time Rebecca's mouth almost moved. Almost. That became the next 20 minutes. Clara sorting cards wrong on purpose. Rebecca correcting her without looking. Me writing names while pretending I wasn't hyper-aware of Rebecca standing close enough for her sleeve to brush mine whenever she reached across the table. It was ordinary. That was the problem. I knew how to handle dramatic kindness. I knew how to handle being rescued at midnight in a silk robe with my ex's messages glowing like small knives. I didn't know how to handle Rebecca quietly turning a name card toward me so I could write straight, or replacing my tea when it cooled, or knowing I needed a task more than I needed another soft conversation. At one point, Clara dropped into a chair and watched us work. What? I asked. Nothing. You have a face. I always have a face. This one is loud. Clara pointed at the cards. You two are weirdly good at this. At handwriting? I said. At being quietly intense over paper rectangles. Rebecca didn't look up. Find your grandmother's card. I'm an adult. You can't distract me with errands. Can't I? Clara searched the table. I leaned closer to Rebecca and whispered, that was frighteningly effective. She's been mine for 25 years. I know the weak points. The phrase should have been normal. She's been mine. It was about Clara. It was sisterly. It still did something to the air around me. Rebecca turned her head, and we were suddenly close enough that I could see the faint line at the bridge of her nose where her glasses had rested. Her gaze dropped to my mouth for less than a second, then to the card in my hand. You misspelled Lucille, she said. My entire body heated. Lucille brought this on herself. Rebecca took the card from me. Her fingers brushed mine, quick, accidental maybe. Her hand stopped for one breath before she pulled away. Clara popped up from behind a stack of envelopes. Did the temperature just change? Yes, I said immediately, then went still, because apparently my survival instincts had left the house in my missing dignity's car. Clara's grin arrived slowly. Rebecca's eyes narrowed at the seating chart like it had personally betrayed her. I put my head down on the table. Please let the brunch kill me. No one is dying before the seating chart is finished, Rebecca said. That's the Hartwell family motto, Clara added. The library door opened again before I could recover. A woman in pearls appeared, sharp-faced and silver-haired, with Clara's eyes and Rebecca's posture. Clara whispered, Grandma. I sat up too fast and nearly knocked over the tea. Rebecca steadied the mug without looking away from her mother. Eleanor. Eleanor Hartwell swept one look over the room, Clara with cards, Rebecca at the table, me in borrowed clothes with damp hair and the unmistakable glow of someone who had slept exactly nowhere she was supposed to. Her smile was small. Olive, isn't it? Yes, ma'am. I heard you had an eventful night. Clara stiffened. Rebecca set down the pen. The sound was tiny. The room felt it anyway. My guest had a difficult night, Rebecca said. That is not brunch conversation. Eleanor's eyebrows rose. Your guest? Rebecca didn't blink. Yes. The word was simple, clean, public enough to matter. Clara looked at me. I looked at the seating card in my hand, because if I looked at Rebecca, my face would confess crimes I hadn't committed yet. Eleanor's gaze shifted between us, calculating, not shocked. Worse, interested. Then I suppose your guest should sit beside you. No, I said too fast. Everyone looked at me. Wonderful. My recovery plan was apparently arson. I mean, I gripped Lucille's misspelled card. Clara's my best friend. I should sit with Clara. Clara's expression warmed. Rebecca watched me for one unreadable second, then nodded. Olive will sit with Clara. Eleanor hummed. As you like. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. The pause was too practiced to be casual. Oh, and Lena, Vale's friend, asked whether Olive would be joining us. My stomach tightened. Eleanor's eyes moved to me. She seemed concerned. The word concerned was dressed beautifully and carrying a knife. It felt like the whole house had leaned toward the door to listen. Rebecca's face didn't change. That was how I knew something inside her had. How generous of her, Rebecca said. Eleanor's smile deepened. Then she left. The door shut. For a second, the three of us remained exactly where we were. The seating cards sat in neat piles. The roses stood in their vase. Lena's name waited at the far end of the table. Clara said, very softly, I hate brunch. I looked at Lena's card like it might look back. Rebecca reached for it. For a second, I thought she would remove it. Instead, she slid it back into the stack. No, she said. I looked up. Her gaze held mine. You do not need to hide from a woman who mistook your pain for permission. The sentence settled into the room. Clara went quiet again. My hand tightened around the pen until the edge pressed into my skin. I'm not sure I can sit there and be fine, I said. Then don't be fine. Rebecca's voice was softer now, not enough for anyone else, enough for me. Be polite if you choose. Be quiet if you need. Leave if you want. But do not perform comfort for someone who embarrassed you and called it concern. My eyes stung. I hated that she kept doing this, taking things I had survived by making small and naming them at their real size. Clara touched my shoulder. I'll sit with you, she said. I nodded. Rebecca picked up a fresh seating card and placed it in front of me. Write her name. I looked at the blank card. Why? Because if you are going to attend, you will not be added as an afterthought. The pen shook a little when I took it. I wrote Olive Marin in black ink. Not perfect. Not elegant. Mine. Rebecca watched until I finished. Then, with that same calm precision, she took the card from my hand and set it beside Clara's. A place. A choice. A visible one. My phone buzzed on the table. Nobody moved. The screen lit. Lena. Saw you're still there. Brave. A strange quiet came over me, not peace, not courage. Something thinner and newer. But mine. I turned the phone face down without answering. Rebecca's eyes stayed on my hand. For once, she didn't tell me what to do. She didn't need to. Clara exhaled beside me. Okay. We survived brunch. I looked at Rebecca. She was already looking at me. Behind her, the white roses stood too straight in their vase, disciplined and pretty and useless. Rebecca reached over, took one rose out, snapped the thorny stem shorter with her fingers, and laid it beside my name card. Clara stared. Rebecca. Rebecca picked up her pen again. For the table, she said. But the rose was not on the table. It was beside my name. And when the brunch bell rang downstairs, I understood two things at once. I was going to have to face Lena. And Rebecca Hartwell had just made sure I would not do it looking like someone who had been placed there by accident. Brunch at the Hartwell house did not begin. It assembled. People appeared from hallways in linen, silk, pearls, sunglasses, and expressions that suggested they had never once eaten from a container. Marta moved through them with trays. Clara's Uncle Peter stood near the windows, telling a story about traffic with the moral seriousness of a courtroom witness. Eleanor Hartwell sat at the head of the table like she had invented chairs. And Lena was there. Of course Lena was there. She stood near the far end of the dining room beside a tall girl with soft curls and a perfect white blouse, laughing at something small enough that only rich people would have considered it entertaining. When Lena saw me, her smile changed, not disappeared. Worse. It became kind. Kindness from the wrong person could be a weapon with clean hands. Clara felt me stop. Her hand brushed mine under the table. You can leave, she whispered. I know. Rebecca, already at the opposite side of the room speaking to Marta, looked over at the exact second my voice thinned. She didn't come to me. She didn't rescue me across the room like I was a scene. She simply reached for the place card beside her plate, moved it one chair farther from Eleanor, then looked at Clara. Clara understood before I did. Oh, she whispered. Do not say oh. She moved herself. I saw. For you. I also saw. And now I'm not supposed to say oh. You are supposed to develop a new vowel. Clara's mouth twitched, but it didn't become a full smile. We sat together halfway down the table. My name card stood beside hers. The shortened white rose lay in front of it like a strange little flag. Lena's eyes found the rose, then Rebecca, then me. I wished violently that flowers could become smokescreens. Eleanor lifted her glass. To Clara. 25 years of noise, charm, and refusal to become respectable. Here, here, Uncle Peter said. I'm choosing to take that as love, Clara announced. It was, Eleanor said. Mostly. Everyone laughed. I managed to smile. The food arrived in elegant, terrifying waves. Smoked salmon. Croissants. Fruit arranged with architectural ambition. Eggs in a dish so polished I could see a distorted version of myself in the silver. Across the table, Lena leaned forward. Olive. You look better. Clara's fork paused. Rebecca's didn't. That was scarier. I kept my voice light. Then what? Lena's smile stayed soft. Last night. You seemed a little overwhelmed. There it was. The delicate public version of pathetic. I felt every head near us tilt by 1 degree. Clara inhaled. My old instinct rose, first joke, shrink it, make it easy. I almost did it. Then I saw Rebecca's hand at the far end of the table, still beside her knife, not clenched, not moving. Waiting. Not for permission to fight for me. For me to decide whether I wanted to stand. I set my fork down. I said. Lena blinked. The table quieted at the edges. I saw you, I continued, because apparently my mouth had chosen to live dangerously. It hurt more than I expected. Then I drank too much. That was mine. The way you texted me this morning was yours. Clara stared at me. Lena's face went pink in 2 clean spots. I was just checking on you. No. You were checking if I was embarrassed enough to answer. The words landed. Not loud. Not cruel. But there. Clara's hand found my knee under the table and squeezed once. Rebecca looked down at her plate for half a second. I thought I saw something almost like pride cross her face. Then Eleanor laughed softly. Well, she said. Brunch is awake now. A few people chuckled. Lena reached for her glass. I didn't mean anything by it. Then it should be easy not to do again, Rebecca said. The room changed. Lena looked at her. Rebecca lifted her eyes at last, calm, composed, cold enough to freeze the apology in Lena's throat. Lena set her glass down. Of course. Clara leaned close to me. I am both proud and afraid. Same, I whispered back. For a while, brunch survived by pretending to be normal. That was a skill the Hartwell family had perfected over generations. Someone asked about wine. Someone complimented the croissants. Peter told the fountain story again with less dignity each time. Clara's cousin dropped a strawberry into her lap and looked personally betrayed by fruit. I even laughed once, a real laugh, small but mine. Rebecca heard it. I knew because her shoulders lowered by the smallest amount, and because she reached for her water a second later like she needed something to do with her hand. Then Eleanor spoke. Rebecca, dear. I had no idea you and Olive were so close. The fork in my hand turned useless. Clara went still beside me. Rebecca didn't answer immediately. She folded her napkin once. We are not discussing Olive. Are we not? Eleanor asked. She is wearing your rose. I looked at the flower. Stupid flower. Beautiful, traitorous flower. It was for the table, Rebecca said. It seems to have traveled. Clara's voice sharpened. Grandma. Eleanor ignored her. I only mean, after last night, people notice arrangements. There it was. The knife beneath the lace. Not accusation, exactly. Suggestion. That was worse. Suggestion let everyone else build the crime in their own head. My skin prickled. Lena looked down at her plate, but her mouth had that careful almost smile again. I pushed my chair back. It scraped the floor. Everyone looked. Wonderful. My second public event in 12 hours. At least I was consistent. I need air, I said. Clara stood immediately. I'll come. No. I touched her wrist. Stay. Her face hurt to look at, not because she was angry, but because she was trying to be loyal to two people and realizing loyalty had edges. I walked out before my voice could break. The hallway felt too bright. I made it to the side terrace before my lungs remembered how to work outside. The garden looked different in daylight, less dramatic, more expensive. The side gate stood at the end of the path, perfectly innocent after betraying me emotionally the night before. I gripped the stone railing and laughed once. It sounded awful. Behind me, the terrace door opened. I didn't turn. Clara? I said, stay. It's not Clara. Rebecca's voice. Of course. The one person I wanted to see, the one person I absolutely could not survive seeing. She stopped a careful distance away. No robe, no dark room, no midnight softness. Just a cream blouse, black trousers, controlled hair, and a face that had locked itself back into place. You handled Lena well, she said. Please don't make this a performance review. I wasn't. It sounded like one. A pause. Then, quietly, I'm sorry. That made me turn. Rebecca Hartwell looked almost uncomfortable with the shape of the words. For what? My mother. She was just asking questions. No. She was laying traps. The wind moved through the garden. Somewhere inside, cutlery chimed against plates, normal life continuing like I wasn't standing outside in borrowed clothes having my chest quietly rearranged. I should go, I said. Rebecca's expression didn't change. That hurt more than if it had. I can have a car brought around. I stared at her. A car. Efficient. Kind. Clean. A beautiful exit wound. That's it? Her jaw tightened. What would you like me to say? I didn't know. That was the problem. I wanted her to say stay. I wanted her not to say it, because I was Clara's best friend, hungover, exposed, and wearing the emotional aftermath of her bedroom like a second skin. I wanted something impossible, and then hated her for not handing it to me irresponsibly. I don't know, I said. Rebecca looked toward the garden. I do. The sentence dropped between us. My heart kicked once, stupid and hopeful. Then she said, this cannot become what people are already trying to make it. The hope stopped. Clean. Embarrassingly fast. So this is about gossip? No. Then what? Her eyes came back to mine. I am older than you. I am your best friend's sister. Last night, you were drunk, hurt, and in my care. Her voice stayed low, controlled, each word placed like it had cost her something. I will not let my kindness become something you question later. I hated the words because they were good. Because they protected me. Because they also closed the door. I don't question it. You might. You don't know that. No, I don't. But I know what power looks like when it pretends it is not in the room. I laughed, but it came out sharp. Power? Yes. That's what this is. That is part of what this is. Convenient. Her eyes darkened. Do not make this smaller because you are angry. Then stop making it impossible because you're scared. The words left me before I could approve them. Rebecca went very still. There, a crack. Not the warm kind. The dangerous kind. I should have apologized. I didn't. Maybe because some part of me was tired of being the easy one, the funny one, the one who turned every sharp thing into a story everyone else could hold without bleeding. Rebecca stepped closer. Not close enough. Never close enough. You think I'm scared? I think you hide fear under rules and call it morality. Her face didn't move. But her hand did, just once, at her side. Her fingers curled inward, like they had reached for something and found air. That may be true, she said. I wasn't ready for that. It took the fight out of me in the worst way. Rebecca looked past me to the side gate, then back. But it does not make the rule wrong. My throat burned. I'm not one of your arrangements, I said. The sentence came out smaller than I wanted. Worse because of that. Rebecca's face changed. I know. Do you? Yes. Because you keep moving me around like a placard. That is not what I'm doing. You moved your seat. You moved Lena. You arranged a car before I even asked for one. I am trying to keep you safe. I know, I said, and the words cracked. That's the problem. You keep making it sound so clean. It is not clean. Then stop acting like I'm a case you handled well. Rebecca flinched. Small. Real. The sight of it should have satisfied me. It didn't. Her voice dropped. Do not make yourself a case I handled. I looked at her. The garden had gone very quiet around us. You were my responsibility last night, because I found you, she said. Not because you were a burden. Responsibility. The word landed wrong. Or maybe I caught it wrong. Either way, it cut. Inside, the terrace door opened again. Clara stood there. She had heard enough, not all of it, maybe enough. Her eyes moved from my face to her sister's, then to the space between us. The space looked guilty. I was checking on Olive, she said. Rebecca's voice returned to normal. She needs to go home. The sentence hit harder because she didn't look at me when she said it. Clara flinched. I stepped back from the railing. Great. Wonderful. Love being discussed like luggage. Olive, Clara started. No. It's fine. My voice was too bright. Dangerous bright. Your sister is right. I should leave before brunch becomes a family sport. Clara's face crumpled. That's not what I want. What do you want? The question came out sharper than I meant. Clara looked between us again, and there it was, the thing none of us had wanted to say, sitting plain in the garden. She knew. Not fully, not in words, maybe. But enough to be hurt. I want to know why I keep walking into rooms where my best friend and my sister already know the rules, she said, and I'm the last one finding out there was a game. Rebecca closed her eyes for half a second. I had never seen her do that, only now, because Clara was the cost. My anger drained so fast it left me cold. Clara, I said. No. She shook her head. Don't do your gentle voice. I hate your gentle voice. It means you think I'm about to break. I don't think that. You both do, Rebecca said. Clara, no? Rebecca, you don't get to use that voice. You used it on everyone else today. Not me. Rebecca absorbed that without blinking. Clara turned to me. Did something happen? No, I said. It was true. Also useless. Clara heard both. Do you want something to happen? The garden went silent. No birds. No wind. No mercy. I could have lied. The old Olive would have. She would have made a joke about sisters being illegal, about hangovers causing temporary insanity, about Rebecca's robe having mind control properties. But my name card was still inside beside Clara's. The rose was still there. Rebecca had told me not to perform comfort for someone who embarrassed me. Apparently that included myself. I don't know, I said. Clara's eyes filled. She nodded once, like I had confirmed a fear she had been negotiating with since breakfast. Rebecca's voice was quiet. Clara. Nothing has happened. But something is happening, Clara said. Neither of us answered. That was the answer. Clara stepped back into the doorway. I need a minute. Clara, I said. She shook her head. Please don't follow me. Then she went inside. The door shut. I stood there with my hands still half raised, as if I could catch her after the fact. Rebecca didn't move. For the first time since I had known her, she looked older. Not less beautiful. Not weak. Just tired in a way control could not polish. I heard her, I whispered. No, Rebecca said. I turned on her. Do not do that. Do not make it clean for me. Her mouth closed. Good. I wanted one person in this house to stop making pain elegant. I backed away. I'll call my own ride. You do not have to leave like this. You told me to leave, I said. You needed to go home. Same door, prettier handle. Rebecca flinched. Small. Real. It should have satisfied me. It didn't. I walked past her toward the side path. She didn't stop me. That was the worst part. The Rebecca of last night would have caught my elbow before I fell. The Rebecca of the library had put my name on a card and made sure I was not an afterthought. This Rebecca let me go, because letting me go was the moral thing. I hated her for being good at the wrong time. At the side gate, I realized I still had no shoes suitable for dramatic exits, only Marta's borrowed flats. At least this time, the gate didn't judge me. A black car pulled up before my app had even found a driver. Marta came out holding a paper bag, my purse, and my shoes from last night, cleaned and wrapped in tissue. Mrs. Hartwell arranged this, she said. Of course she had. Inside the bag, water, pain reliever, toast wrapped in a napkin, my phone charger. And the dark burgundy robe folded at the bottom. On top of the robe sat a small cream card. Rebecca's handwriting. You may return it when you're ready. Not before. R.H. I stared until the letters blurred. Not if. When. A door not fully closed. My chest hurt. I took the bag and looked back at the house. Rebecca stood in the upstairs window, not hiding, not waving. Just there, watching the consequence she had chosen. I should have felt protected. Instead, I felt placed carefully outside her life. My phone buzzed. A message from Clara. I love you. I'm mad. Both are true. Then, before I could answer, another message appeared from an unknown number. Rebecca. Do not answer anyone from pain today. Not Lena. Not Clara. Not me. I looked up at the window. She was still there. Cold sister. Careful woman. Locked door with light underneath. My ride waited. The robe sat heavy in the bag beside my shoes. And for the first time since last night, I understood that being protected could hurt almost as much as being left. I did not answer anyone from pain. This was inconvenient, because Pain had opinions. Pain wanted to text Lena a paragraph with punctuation sharp enough to require a warning label. Payne wanted to text Clara 17 apologies, 2 jokes, and 1 dramatic offer to move countries. Payne wanted to text Rebecca nothing at all, which was also a kind of message. So I put my phone face down on my kitchen table and unpacked the paper bag Marta had given me. Water. Toast. Charger. Pain reliever. My clean shoes. And the robe. Rebecca's burgundy silk robe lay at the bottom, folded with the same clean precision as everything else she touched. I lifted it out. The silk still smelled faintly like jasmine and quiet. I set it over the back of a chair and walked away. Then I walked back and fixed the sleeve, because it had folded wrong. Then I hated myself, because some part of me knew I wasn't only keeping the robe. I was keeping the feeling. And if I returned it too quickly, maybe I could pretend I had returned that, too. My phone buzzed. Clara. I'm still mad. But I don't want Lena to be the reason we stopped talking. Can I come over later? I typed back before I could hide inside a joke. Yes. Come over. I'm sorry. I love you. I don't want to hide from you. The reply came fast. Good. I'm bringing noodles. Because apparently emotional maturity requires carbs. Clara arrived at 6 with noodles and swollen eyes. She stepped inside and saw the robe immediately. Her face changed, not anger, not exactly. A bruise, remembering it was a bruise. I was going to return it, I said. I know. I didn't keep it for weird reasons. Clara looked at me. I closed my mouth. She spoke first. For the record, my sister giving someone that robe is insane. Helpful. When I was 16, I borrowed it because I wanted to feel rich while eating cereal. She made me return it in 9 minutes. She timed you. She said silk has memory. I looked at the robe. Of course she did. Clara poked at her noodles. When I saw her with you, I recognized something. My sister feels things like they're dangerous. And with you, she looked, dangerous feelings level. Careful. The room seemed to shrink. I didn't plan this, I said. I know. Nothing happened. I know that, too. She was more careful than anyone has ever been with me. Clara's eyes filled, but she didn't cry. That's the part that makes it hard. If she had been awful, I could hate her. If you had lied, I could hate you. But everyone was trying not to be wrong, and it still hurt. I reached across the table. She took my hand. I don't want to lose you, I said. You won't. I don't know what I want from her. Then don't make me carry it before you know. Her fingers tightened once. And don't disappear to make me comfortable. That landed harder than I expected. I won't. I mean it, Olive. Don't sneak. Don't lie. Don't treat me like an obstacle in my own life. You're not. I know. But I need everyone to act like they know. I nodded. Clara pulled out her phone. There's something else. A small family chat. Someone had tried to send a video, and Rebecca had physically taken their phone. Another message, Lena had been quietly removed from next month's wine weekend, because Rebecca had made a strong point about cruelty disguised as concern. I stared at the screen. Rebecca had removed the teeth from the night before I even knew where they were. Then my phone buzzed once. Rebecca. You left your earring at the house. I can send it with Clara. A safe message. Practical. Distant. I looked at Clara. She read my face and closed her eyes. Oh God. I need to return the robe. You have mailers. I need to return it myself. Clara put her chopsticks down. Tonight? If you don't want me to, I won't. Text her. Here, in front of me. So I did. I'll return the robe myself. Are you home? The answer came after almost 2 minutes. Yes. Then, you do not have to come tonight. I typed back before I could lose my nerve. I know. Clara wiped under one eye. Go return the stupid expensive robe. But don't come back acting like I gave permission for everything. I'm giving permission for honesty. That's different. I hugged her hard. She hugged me harder. Clara insisted on driving me and waiting outside, because apparently emotional maturity also required supervision. And noodles. The Hartwell house was quieter without a party inside it. This time, I didn't go to the side gate. I didn't stand outside waiting to be found. I rang the front bell. Marta opened the door, looked at the robe folded over my arm, and gave me the kind of smile that knew too much and said nothing. She's in the library, she said. Of course she was. Rebecca stood by the long table. No seating cards now. No roses, except one white stem in a narrow glass by the window. She wore a charcoal sweater and dark trousers. Her hair was down. She turned, and her eyes went first to my face, then the robe, then back. Is Clara all right? She asked. The first thing, not the robe, not herself. Clara. She's hurt. She's honest. She's eating noodles in my apartment like a tragic raccoon. A small sound escaped Rebecca, not quite a laugh, but mine to remember. She knows I'm here, I said. Good. I didn't want to sneak. Good. I held out the robe. Rebecca didn't take it immediately. For one strange second, the silk stretched between us like a question. Then she accepted it and folded it over the back of a chair. My hands felt wrong without it. I saw what you did, I said. Her face went still. What did I do? The video. Lena. The gossip. That was not for gratitude. I know. That's why it matters. Rebecca looked toward the window. I was angry. At Lena. At everyone who saw you hurting and treated it as scenery. I stepped closer, then stopped before the distance became something neither of us had agreed to. You told me to go home. Yes. That hurt. I know. You didn't stop me. No. Why? Rebecca looked at me then. Because last night, I stopped everything around you. The guest. The phone. The cold. The party. The gossip. And then I saw Clara's face, and I realized if I kept deciding what protected everyone, I would become another person making choices around you instead of with you. I wanted you to ask me to stay, I said. Rebecca closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, something in her had changed, not collapsed. Unlocked. I know. That's all? No. She stepped away from the chair. I wanted to ask. The room became very still. Rebecca's voice stayed even, but the cost showed in her hands. I didn't move. I wasn't sure I was breathing correctly. My fingers had found the edge of the table without my permission, and I held it the way I had held the stone railing outside. Not for balance. For proof that the room was still solid. I wanted to ask you to stay when you were wearing my robe and looking at me like I had made the world quieter. I wanted to ask this morning when you laughed at breakfast. I wanted to ask in the library when you wrote your name and your hand shook, but you did it anyway. My breath caught, but I refused to look away. I wanted to ask on the terrace, she said. And because I wanted it that much, I did not trust myself to be the one asking. Rebecca. Her name changed the air every time I used it. I am sober. Yes. I am not in your care. No. I am not asking you to rescue me or fix Lena or manage Clara for me. I know. And I am not Lena's leftover damage. Rebecca's face sharpened. No, she said, fast enough to reveal her. I'm still scared. So am I. That almost made me smile. You? I am frequently terrified. I simply dress well. A laugh broke out of me. Rebecca's mouth softened, and this time she didn't hide all of it. I need Clara to matter in this, I said. She does. I need time. You have it. I need not be hidden like a mistake. Rebecca's eyes held mine. Then I will not hide you. On the table beside the rose sat my missing earring. Rebecca picked it up. You left it near the side gate. The gate kept it. The gate has standards. I laughed too hard. Rebecca's smile finally arrived, real. She held out the earring. I reached for it. Our fingers touched, and this time neither of us pretended it was accidental. The contact lasted one breath. Then two. Rebecca's hand turned slightly. I took the earring, not because I didn't want the rest, but because I did, and wanting no longer meant rushing. I should go back to Clara, I said. Rebecca nodded. Yes. That yes didn't feel like a door closing. It felt like a door learning patience. At the library entrance, I stopped. For the record, if I ever sleep in your bed again, I would prefer to be invited while sober. Rebecca's eyes darkened by one careful degree. Then she crossed the room slowly. Not all the way. Enough. Then hear me sober, she said. You are welcome in my bed only when you want rest, safety, or me. Never because you have nowhere else to go. Good. And Olive. She paused. When that day comes, I will not sleep in the chair. The line should have destroyed me. It did, politely. I opened the door before my face could betray the full damage. Good night, Rebecca. Good night, Olive. When I stepped into the hallway, Clara was waiting by the front door, arms crossed, noodles in one hand, because apparently she had brought them in the car. I froze. She looked at my face, then past me at the library door, then back at me. She had come. She had waited. She was holding noodles in a hallway outside her sister's library, because that was the kind of person she was. Something in my chest went very quiet. Then Clara opened her mouth. No details, she said immediately. Nothing happened. Your face is happening. My face has rights. Clara studied me for a long second. Then she held out the noodles. Eat. You get poetic when hungry. I took them. Behind me, the library door remained open. Open enough. Clara linked her arm through mine as we walked out. I'm still mad sometimes, she said. I know. But I'm here. I know. And if my sister starts dressing better on purpose when you come over, I'm moving out emotionally. She already dresses like a final boss. Exactly. Where does she go from there? I laughed into the night. At the car, I looked back once. Rebecca stood in the doorway of the library, dark burgundy robe folded over one arm, watching us leave without trying to stop us. This time, being watched did not feel like being placed outside her life. It felt like being trusted to return. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a message from Clara. Sister says the gate wants an apology. Then, beneath it, from Rebecca. The gate is willing to negotiate. I stared at the messages until my tea went cold. Then I answered both of them, from something that was not pain. Tell the gate I'll come by tonight.